Welcome to the second edition of the podcast series In Varietate Concordia. My name is Sneška Quaedvlieg-Mihailović and I'm the Secretary General of Europa Nostra, and Europe, culture and cultural heritage are mission and passion of my life. I'm delighted to host these interviews with influential European personalities about the role of culture and cultural heritage for the sense of belonging, sense of togetherness in Europe, for a better quality of our life and the well-being of our democracies, and also for the better future for Europe and our planet. This initiative, In Varietate Concordia, is launched by Europa Nostra, the European Voice of Civil Society Committed to Cultural Heritage, together with our Heritage Hub in Lisbon, run by Centro Nacional de Cultura, and with the invaluable support of the Centro, with the Calouste Gulbenkian Foundation based in Lisbon. So it's always about partnerships, and of course it is also about the support of the European Union that is supporting the European Heritage Hub, initiative of which In Varietate Concordia is one of the key activities. So the first edition of this podcast, we recorded it in Lisbon, in the headquarters of the Calouste Gulbenkian Foundation, and I had the privilege to interview famous, world-renowned pianist Maria João Pires. Today, we are in Brussels, at the headquarters of the European Parliament, and I have the privilege to interview another type of virtuoso, I would say, a virtuoso of political and cultural leadership. Mrs. Sabine Verheyen, first Vice President of the European Parliament, a renowned influencer and powerful voice for putting culture and cultural heritage at the heart of European policymaking. Dear Sabine, it is a pleasure to welcome you to the In Varietate Concordia, and thank you also for allowing us to do that in collaboration with your own podcast, Europa2Go. First of all, dear Sabine, warmest congratulations, because recently the Parliament magazine decided that you are the member of the European Parliament who should receive the award for, especially in the category culture, creative industry, for your leadership for putting culture at the heart of European policymaking. What does this award mean to you?
Yeah, I feel really very honored because it's not usual that you get the prize. It's nothing you get each and every year. It's a special award, and I was quite proud of that because for me it shows that it is seen what we as parliamentarians are doing here for special sectors in the fields we are active. And I was very proud that I first was announced to be one of the candidates, and in the end, when I got the prize, I was really very, very happy because I think culture and the creative industries must be much more in the focus of our political work. And that is something I'm fighting for now since years, and that this was seen was making me quite happy.
And in your acceptance speech, you said culture is not just something nice to have. It's something so fundamental.
Yeah, it's essential for our societies, it's essential for our identity, it's essential also for the European Union. It's the glue that keeps us together. It's the soul of Europe, I always say, because we are more in Europe than just a business club. We are a unity of values. And as you said, united in diversity is the motto of the European Union. And where, when not in culture, we see this diversity, but we see also what unites us. If you travel through Europe, you see so many cities, architecture, music that is influenced by each other. The Cologne Dome never would have existed in the form like it is when there were not French architects trying to build buildings more up to the sky. We have so many things in our history that joins us. and we have to be more aware, and we have to fight that this is also part of our future.
Yeah, especially in the times that we are living, where the European project is attacked from inside and from outside. We need that stronger sense of belonging, and cultural heritage is something that plays a fundamental role there.
Yeah. And it's more. It's not just as we talk about Europe as a business club, we also have to see that cultural and creative industries and also our cultural heritage has also an economical value. No tourism without cultural heritage, no tourism without concerts and events and museums and other things. And it is more than 4.5 up to 5% of the GDP is created by the cultural and creative industries. And that has also to be seen. There are two sides of culture. It's on the one thing, the things we love. It's the basis of our identity, of our values. It also reflecting our values, but it is also an enormous economic power with more than 8 million people working in this sector, and mainly young people. So it's more than the automotive industry. And when we discuss about support, we should keep it in the same way, I think.
These are extremely important arguments. I often say it is both heart and soul and bread and butter. Exactly. And this is that combination which make it so important. Sabine, let's just say something about your personal journey, because you come from Aachen, Aix-la-Chapelle, one of the amazing historical cities, heart of Europe, the city of Charlemagne. Not only you come from that city, but you have been a mayor of that city for a number of years. Growing up and being responsible for the management of that historical city, which also during the Second World War was heavily destroyed and then rose from the ashes, how much this influenced also your sort of the political path and the journey that you have made from Aachen to now being first Vice President of the European Parliament?
Coming from a city directly to a border, the Dutch and Belgian border in our case, makes Europe everyday's life experience. My grandmother was Belgian. I grew up in Aachen, and for me also the historical places were always places where you could feel the spirit of Europe. When you are in the Aachen Cathedral, which was built up in the year 800 by Charlemagne, he was the first big European unifying a big part of Europe. Okay, the Romans were also there, and they were also in Aachen, so we have also Roman roots.
So you have all these various layers.
We have these various layers. That's what I always say, different identities. For me, it was the first time when you grow up in such a historic city with all these things. It is so, it is there, and you don't really
take it
you
for
are
granted?
not aware. You take it for granted. It's there. It's nice. You know it. It's your home. But when I started as a mayor in our city, where I had visitors from everywhere, the first time had to deal really with the history of the building, which pictures are hanging on the wall, what was the history of each room, what happened when. And I took that very serious. And the first time I started then to really to deal with our history and to see what this history has also, how relevant it is also for our actual life, but also for future ideas to develop. And when I had visitors groups, for example, school classes or guests of the city, which I also guided through the town hall, and where you talk about the history of the city, I first felt, much more linked to the history of the city, and also to my history as a citizen of the city. And that led directly to the European level. The Aachen Treaty was signed in Aachen, not just the modern one now to refresh the the Élysée Treaty, but the old one from 1700 and I think 48. Don't fix me with the figures. But there were so many things that happened at that time. To see also that the emperors who want to be emperor of the Holy Roman Empire of German nations, these constructions we had over centuries in Europe, they had to be coronated in Aachen as a king. So you see how also the different countries in Europe were also linked to our city, and you get another awareness for the linkage we had already in the past, and not just with the modern Europe, and you can build a bridge also to the modern structures of Europe. And that was what led me in the end also to the core of the European idea, that we have to find solutions together, that we don't have to fight each other, that we see what we have in common and build up on what we have in common in our history, in our cultural heritage, but also in our possibility to solve the problems of the future.
Yeah. So clearly you're showing that it's not just about the past, it's rather to building a future, but drawing from the positive pages of our shared history and overcoming the dark pages of our
but the dark pages are also strongly belonging to that, because when you forget history, when you forget the bad sides, you make the same mistakes all the time again. And when we, on the one hand, are fighting against other, let's say, dictators and others destroying cultural heritage, you see how important it is to keep the heritage alive also for the identity of people, for the identity of a region, of a nation, of Europe in general. And that is also one of the reasons why many forces from outside are trying to attack also on our culture, on what is important for us, on what makes us Europeans European.
We see it also in a dramatic way, what's happening in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And how much is it important for Ukrainians from day one to protect also their cultural heritage, which is heavily under attack as part of this brutal
and we are always claiming that the Taliban were destroying cultural heritage sites in Afghanistan. And we see that Russia is doing the same. We see also, for me also, the question when it comes to the cancel culture, that things that were bad in the past should not be in a monument or something. No, that's, for me, the wrong way. We have to deal with this. We have to explain why it was bad out of our time, but also explain how it was seen at that time, because then we can learn which steps we went forward, how societies changes, how the view on a special historical event could also change in future. But if you don't understand your history, if you don't understand your heritage and your culture, and just build upon, let's say, nothing, the mindset of the time, it's not enough.
Fundamental for the health of our democracy, because revisionism of history, it often starts by the revisionism of history and leads to very dangerous political conflicts and even
what we see at the moment also inside Europe, that history is repeating. When you take a look to the early 30s in the last century, and you take a look how it in some countries is starting again with anti-Semitic approaches, with nationalistic approaches, with searching for an enemy from outside or inside. That's what we already had. But if you don't know history, you don't see it, that it is repeating, that it happens somehow again, and that we have to really fight strong for our values and our democracies, under the sense of it should never happen again. But if you don't know what should never happen again, you cannot work against that.
Exactly. Listening to you, you feel very strong about that coming from Aachen. I feel very strong about that coming from former Yugoslavia.
Yeah.
Alas, I've seen it that it has happened only recently, and it's still very much present. So for all these reasons, we need Europe to put a much stronger emphasis on the role of culture and cultural heritage for the future of Europe. Sabine, I don't know whether you remember, it was roughly 5 years ago that Europa Nostra, together with Culture Action Europe and European Cultural Foundation, launched a campaign called the Cultural Deal for Europe. We wanted to campaign for having a real cultural deal. That was the time of the European Green Deal, and we said we need a European deal for culture. And you have been present, and you spoke very forcefully at the very first meeting, and every year you were with us. So there we are. After 5 years, we have a European cultural compass, a cultural compass for Europe. Would you say that we are really now facing sort of, after this joint work of the civil society and institutions, a true political momentum for cultural heritage?
I think yes, and it is a first very important step that we have this compass, but it's not enough just to have a compass. You have to also to walk on that way. And I think that is what's coming up now. We are discussing about the new Agora program, and there also the member states have to confess if they are really following also these ideas of the cultural compass or not. And when I see at the moment the discussions, the Parliament, the Commission also already made an ambitious proposal for the cultural sector under the new Agora framework. I think that is very important, but the Parliament says we need more, especially out of all these reasons you were already mentioning, that culture is essential also for our societies, and that we need this in addition to all the other things. And we talked already about also when it comes to defense, what should we defend when we don't have culture? And also, if you take a look which attacks we have from outside, also against our mindset, against our values, via cultural activities, via media, via propaganda, via influence into also the cultural sector partly, you see that it has also something to do with defending our values and our history. And when it comes to competitiveness, for example, which is also one of the important points, you can also say we have to make our cultural industries competitive to those, for example, coming from America or from Asia or from where else. So investing in culture on the European level is defense, is competitiveness, and it is the soul and the let's say the fundament we are building upon when it comes to our European motto, united in diversity. And that is the reason why we are fighting very strong as Parliament for a stronger budget under Agora EU. And I know that there are several member states who want to have a general cut of 2% of the budget, but it should not be done in the Agora program. If you take a look to, let's say, the big cake of European funding, you have 1/3 that goes to agriculture and this field, environment and so on. You have 1/3 that goes into competitiveness, into industry, into the single market, into supporting our companies and our regional development infrastructure and other things. You have a defense budget and others. And if you take a look at all this big cake, like I said, already 2/3 is spent to two big parts. And then you take a look how big Agora is compared to that. You will not save the world in cutting 2% of the Agora program, but for the Agora program, the money we ask for is so essential to have a better support for our artists, for our cultural heritage, for music, for resilience when it also comes to our media structures, and to have a basis for reliable sources and trustable sources when it comes also to news and to the production of news. And we have such a broad field that has to be supported by this program, so that the money we have foreseen as Parliament is not too much for the sector when it comes to the value it has for the European Union.
In fact, it is a bare minimum. It's a bare minimum. But is it not slightly paradoxical that not only we have the culture compass for Europe, 1 month ago, the presidents of 3 institutions, Ursula von der Leyen for the European Commission, Roberta Metsola, your president of the European Parliament, and the president of the Republic of Cyprus, acting on behalf of the presidency of the Council of Ministers, they all together signed the joint declaration, Europe for Culture, Culture for Europe, very strong motto, never happened before, that the three institutions come together. But would it not be paradoxical if after such a historic, we call it a historic declaration. I would like to hear from you. Is it so historic or is it just words? But then it should have a historic sort of consequence in the negotiations about the next budget. That really that vision is translated in a mainstreaming, not just Agora EU, but also in national and regional partnerships plans where the big money is. Yeah. So how can we achieve this?
Yeah, that is what I meant at the beginning of my statement, where I said it is the first very important step that we are united in the awareness of the importance of the cultural sector and the creative sector for Europe and for everyone, not just for Europe as an institution, but for the people in Europe. But paper is just paper when actions are not following. And that is why I say we have to fight that this program, that this compass leads a way where we step on, where we go step by step forward to strengthen the cultural sector. And that is why I think we should not stop with celebrating ourselves. Yes, we have a document, but we have to go forward now, that we fill it with life, that we fill it with substance. And substance in this case means activities on the one hand, ideas, projects, but also the money for the projects. And I think that is very important, that we are not standing still where we are now, but going forward and fighting further, because not everyone sees it as so important. Like we said at the beginning, it's not a nice to have, it is more, but not everyone sees it. I think the Corona times were quite helpful at that time, when people saw what they were missing when the cultural part is lying down. There was nothing, no concerts, no possibilities to go somewhere, and we saw what impact it has had on people's healthiness, on people's well-being in general. And at that time, it was easy to convince also those who are working in, let's say, the IMCO committee or the ITRE committee or in the budget committee or in some of these economical-driven committees, to convince them that it is important also to invest in culture. But now, as everything is normal again, it's normal life. So it's there, and nobody asks. And I think that is something we always have to fight for, to raise awareness of the importance of the cultural and creative sector for our daily life, for our well-being, for our mental health too. There are so many aspects in the cultural sector, and we always have to raise awareness about the importance of this field for our lives.
Well, that is indeed this mainstreaming. And when I'm listening to you, you are just mentioning virtually all strategic priorities of the European Union could be enhanced with the contribution of culture, cultural heritage, creative industries. Also the external aspect, also in the enlargement. It is so fundamental, the connection with the candidate countries, and now we have also the boost for the perhaps the new enlargement coming. It is fundamental.
Yeah, and also in cultural diplomacy. Culture is sometimes the door opener also to get to political talks. Sometimes it's easier in a cultural exchange program to make bondages between civil society on both sides, between artists in another country. And via this bridge you build there, you can also ease up political talks and strategical talks and other things. That is what I always see when, after the Second World War, at the beginning of the European Union, with the Élysée Treaty we had between Germany and France. When I think about the history where my grandparents and their parents were taught by their teachers that there is an inherited enemyship between France and Germany. such a catastrophe in thinking. But with this cultural exchange, with the exchange of people, with building friendship, bringing orchestras together to make music together, bringing civil societies, organizations together. Sports is also important in this field. We could overcome this crude idea of the past, of an enemyship between people they even don't know, to learn to know each other, to build these bridges, especially also via cultural cooperation, via artists exchange, via music exchanges, via people learning to know each other from another more emotional side, helps a lot in preparing the ground also for political cooperation.
And if we are where we are now, 70 years later, it is very much thanks to all these connections and collaborations and projects in the 70 years, and thanks to all these cultural cooperations centuries before us. And that's why I'm wondering, next year, in March 2027, all the politicians will come to Rome to celebrate the 70th anniversary of the Treaty of Rome. And I'm wondering, should we not also make a massive descent on Rome, in a sense, the gathering of joy and celebration of the cultural world in Rome, to demonstrate how important it is, and that finally, 70 years later, we very, very clearly said that European project, though it started through economy, is first and foremost a peace project and cultural project. Exactly. What do you think about that idea?
I think that would be very important to do that, not just to have the economical side or the, let's say, political institutional side, but also the cultural side. Because what really is lacking at the moment is not that we don't have enough economical cooperation, but what makes us weak towards also the attacks from inside when it comes to nationalistic parties that are coming up more and more, to separatism and these ideas, attacks from outside, is that we have to raise again more awareness about our common history, about our common culture, and that what we have together as our fundament for our way how we are today, the European way of life. And I think that is so important that we show that also in parallel to the Treaty of Rome, to the political act, because economics was a vehicle for peace. To work
it was
together.
Just a tool.
Yeah,
that was not an objective.
It was a vehicle to control that nobody can make war against each other. The first agreements were coal and steel. That is what you need to build weapons, and that was the reason why they wanted to have it under control. But the idea behind was sustainable peace. And sustainable peace also in yourself you can just get when you have friends around, when you know each other, when you share common values, when you share a common culture and common ideas and common heritage. And that is what we have a lot. We have a lot of common heritage, cultural heritage, and also heritage of values throughout Europe. But we have to show better and more what we have in common and not just what divides us. Because the division or the diversity, I don't call it a division, it's diversity we have. It's something that enriches us completely. And but we don't have to lose the view for that what we have in common in our culture and in our values, so that we are stronger together than if we are just looking on that what divides us or what is diverse and not what we have in common.
No, but that's why, indeed, what you're saying, there is no contradiction in defending diversity and in defending unity. Because and that is why In Varietate Concordia, this is what is the beauty of the entire European. It's not about homogenization or harmonization, but it is also in highlighting what we have in common. Because for a very long period of time, we were afraid in Europe, I would say, to speak about the European identity, what we have in common. We really have to only emphasize diversity. And now, also with the geopolitical situation that we are living, time has come that we proudly and consciously also speak about the importance of unity. Yeah. European sovereignty, can we do it only through competitiveness and through defense? European sovereignty needs a feeling, a sense of belonging.
That is something we are discussing also at the moment when it comes to the media sector. Because especially there, when it comes to our movies, when it comes to the way how Europeans are telling their stories in a movie, in the cinema, or in a piece for theater or something like that. It's different to the stories that are told by the American film producers in Hollywood or Asian movies. They are telling their stories, but we have to tell our stories, and so that people can also identify with this. And I think that is something, together with our culture, the way how we tell our songs, our feelings, it's different to others. And that is what we have to cherish, that we have our own structures, our own identity, our also European identity in the diversity we have. And that is why I always say we have different layers of identity. I'm first coming from Eilendorf. That's the part of the city of Aachen where I grew up, where I always lived, where my parents were coming from, knowing that my grandmother was Belgian, but that was my small surrounding where I grew up. I went to school in Aachen. I studied in Aachen, so I also feel as a citizen of my city, where I was also mayor. But I'm also from Northern Westphalia. We are different to those in Bavaria or in the north or in the east, but we are still part of one common Germany. And like this, we are Germans, but also as a part of Europe. And we have another layer again on the European level. And especially when you come from a border region, you very quickly feel not just as someone from Aachen, but as a European coming out of a region, not just of a national structure. And I think that is something we have to also to put against those who are just minimizing our identity to one single thing. We are more, we have so many layers, we are so broad in what we can do and how we can feel. And I think that is something we also have to bring forward, and we have to do more for this European identity. We try to do that with programs like Erasmus, with the artists' mobility programs and schemes in the Creative Europe program or the new Agora program, to give also the experience of belonging to a bigger unity in Europe. It's also what we do with the Discover EU program, where I'm really expecting that we also try to involve much more our cultural heritage into these programs and schemes, so that young people have the opportunity when they're traveling around Europe with their tickets, that they also can see our cultural heritage, our diverse but also common heritage, so that they feel somehow linked to these things. And I think we have to do much more for a European identity as an additional layer to what we have from the local, the regional, the national one. Because we are more.
That is, and understanding that there's a beauty and richness in it, that it's not a threat to other layers. They will always be there.
No, we don't use it.
It's just one of the layers that is adding, and it's also not something that bureaucracies has made, but it's something that thousands of years of our shared history has created.
Exactly.
And I think there we have really a lot of work to do together. The European Parliament, the civil society, and the European Commission, so many mayors. I think the mayors of historic cities, they have a very special role, I think, in highlighting this.
And they very often have also, let's say, organizations where they work together, where they start to bring also the links they have between the cities. Also in the past, cities were always linked. Also in history, they had economical bridges to other regions. They have, for example, when it comes to the textile cities where textile industry was strong in the past, they very often have a link. They were competitors, but they also had a link. And I think to bring up also these things, to see where also the local level was already in the past linked to other regions throughout Europe and how they influenced each other, how also via economy I'm thinking about the word in English, Handelsrouten.
The trade routes.
The trade routes. They were also bringing culture together to other regions. Porcelain came like exchanges, new things. And I think that is so important to see that it was always mixed up with each other. Culture, economy, and identity, and bringing also new ideas into new regions. I think we would still sit in a cave or on a tree if we wouldn't have this exchange, also this cultural exchange. And I think that's very important that we see that we are enriching each other's life and not just looking at a very small part of our life, but also thinking big.
Yeah. And this is why in this European Heritage Hub project, that was initiated by the European Parliament, and Europa Nostra is now very proud to run this new initiative with a number of partners. We have involved a lot of cities, and both individual city, Krakow, Athens, Nicosia, Lisbon, and the big networks like Eurocities involved, because we think that in that important mission that we have to highlight the importance of cultural heritage, cities have a very good role, an important role. And listening to you also about this importance of identity, you mentioned a number of programs. There is also this European Heritage Label initiative that started by the member states and then with the European Commission. I'm often calling it a little bit the best kept secret of Europe. It has a huge potential, in my view, to grow. What do you think? Can we do something more about this European Heritage Label?
I think that is something we always were fighting for in the Culture Committee, also in the Parliament, that this is seen more. Because you have on the one side the big UNESCO issues, and sometimes it's seen as the small brother of the UNESCO label. But it is not. It is not. It is something special which has to do with our identity, with Europe's, what is important also for Europe. For example, take a look to the monasteries we have. They were linked in the past. And if you have a root of monasteries who were linked in the past also today to create a new link between these heritage sites is so important, and this label can help to highlight what we have also in the regions, in a local city, in a small village, where you have really diamonds sometimes of culture that are not big enough or important enough for a UNESCO label, but which has a huge value for our European identity, not just in a city, in a village, or in a region, but also for us as Europeans. And that is why I think this label must be promoted much more. And it must be promoted also through our tourism our agencies, to everything, that it is seen not just as a nice label somewhere on a wall of a building, but that it is really that we create a better awareness for this.
And with a stronger involvement of citizens and civil society. So
because many people are also voluntarily working to care for these cultural heritage sites we have. It's not just always done by state money or by professional support. It's very often, especially in the smaller villages, that these places are protected, that these places are upheld by people who are devoluntarily working for their cultural goods and cultural heritage and the identity of a region, of a city or a village.
So, yet another challenge ahead. Sabine, I think you and I could speak for hours. I know the time is running. I would like to end, to go back to Rome with last I would say, stop at this journey that we have now been doing together. Because we spoke about the Agora EU project, where, in fact, which is going to bring together culture, media, and values. So we spoke about importance of democracy, so the values. And there's one value which is also the value of humanism. In Rome, I know that you have been recently in Rome with the entire delegation of the European People's Party, and you had the occasion to meet Pope Leo XIV, who recently published an encyclical, Magnifica Humanitas, Magnificent Humanity. It is an extraordinary role that the Pope Leo XIV is today doing in the world to sort of promote this value of humanism. How was this meeting, and what impact did it had on you? And do you think that Europe could also stand more in the future for these values of humanism in Europe and in the world?
I was not personally there because I had a surgery before, but my colleagues were there, many of them, and they had quite impressing visit with the Pope. But when it comes to the encyclica, to the papers, I think it is very important that we see us as human beings more also in a holistic approach. Humanity has not just the, let's say, existing of having something to eat, having something to drink, having a good job, having all these material things. But a human being is much more. We are oriented to each other. We are living just in unity with other people, because otherwise we will die or get poor. And that is what many experiments in the past also showed, that if you don't have this exchange, this let's say from me to you and from you to me, these bilateral and multilateral connections. And a human being is more, it has values, it has dignity. Human beings have a dignity, and I think to talk about humanity also with the unwavering dignity of a human being, with its own ideas, with its own identity, with its different cultures and the diversity. And I think coming more from the religious sides, I think God made us as diverse as we are, because it is enriching and not making us enemies. Just to look at each other as a human being in its core would help us also to find peace, perhaps broader than just on the European level. And I think that is something the world needs more than ever. And that is also what this Pope is standing for peace in the world, for peace between human beings, between people everywhere.
Wonderful way to end this conversation. Dear Sabine Verheyen, first Vice President of the European Parliament, thank you for being such an inspiring interlocutor, and thank you for being such a powerful advocate of the vital role of culture and cultural heritage for the future of our Europe and of our planet. And good luck with all the fights ahead, with all the conversations and campaigns for the next budget of the European Union. We hope that the European Union indeed will walk the talk, but with champions like you, I think we are fully confident.
But let me also thank you, because we also need people like you who are always fighting and convincing people to fight for culture, to fight for our heritage. And if we wouldn't have people like you, who are always reminding us also as politicians in our everydays, running around and discussing this and that and that, I think you and your organizations and all your fellow activists, I call it like this, exactly, for the cultural sector, you are so important, because without your support, we would never succeed in bringing culture to the core of European politics. Thank you for that.
Stronger and better together.